We all know that business is about making the right move. It's about making that right move on the chessboard to win against your opponent. And that opponent can be anything from your competition to potentially even a potential prospect. And today what we're going to be talking about is how you can mathematically use game theory to scale your business. And game theory from the level of making the right decision to get the highest expected value. I'm gonna give you a quick example here of how this can even apply to business, because a lot of people don't even understand that it can. Let's say you're on a sales call with somebody, and on this scenario, you are trying to sell them on your $5,000 program. Okay, so in this game situation, it is a win or it is a lose, meaning you collect the 5,000 or you don't. In this scenario, these people have no idea that you're trying to sell them. They don't even know that it's a win-lose scenario. They've never heard sales scripts before, etc. These people are gonna be a lot easier to make money from and potentially exploit from a game theory definition than people who are hyper aware of what sales are, know everything, and know that you are trying to sell them and know that this is a potential win-lose. And if they know that it's a potential win-lose, and then now you know that they know, that infinitely goes, he knows that I know that I know that he knows that he knows that I know, into an infinite loop where basically you reach something called the Nash equilibrium, which is the highest expected value for both parties, okay? And that's where we're trying to get to with this video. I know I got a little schizo there, but we're gonna be jumping into game theory and how you can scale your business and how you can make proper decisions so that you can get ahead. So stay tuned, let's jump into it. Ladies and gentlemen, so today I'm gonna be talking about something that is not like a commonly talked about thing when it comes to scaling your business, or something that a lot of people talk about, but it's something that I've relied on a lot when it's come to scaling my business and making proper decisions when it comes to like literally anything business related, or any sort of decision that you can make. You can apply a level of mathematics to it so that you can make a more mathematically sound decision with whatever you're doing. And it's not even like simply just like decision making. It also comes down to like analyzing like for example, the type of game you are playing against other people, or potentially like, are you competing even against other companies? Are you trying to compete maybe in a sales conversation against the other person on the sales call who's trying to preserve their money and you're trying to get them to invest it with you? There's thousands of games that happen in business, but today we're going to dive into game theory and how you can make proper decisions based off of how to understand this a little bit better. So let's just jump into kind of what I have prepared here. And I'm going to kind of riff a little bit and just kind of talk about a bunch of different subjects and give you guys some cool examples with this as well, and just take it from there. Okay, so pretty much with game theory, pretty much game theory is a mathematical study of decision making where there is another or multiple others playing the same game, right? So a competitor, like I said, or potentially some, like actually, let's say one of your prospects or one of your clients, or let's say even like, a business partner could even be a portion of that as well if you're in that sort of conundrum. And obviously any game is where you're, basically competing for outcomes where the outcome can be known or even unknown. And this is the thing a lot of you guys don't know when it comes to business. Business is a game at the end of the day, right? All in all, this is the definition of what a game is, right? Where you're trying to get an outcome, you're competing with other players for an outcome. And if that's the definition of a game, then business essentially becomes a game. And whoever can play the game of business the best way, make decisions the best way, is going to win the game. And there is no like definitive like winning the game. There is like societal things that you can kind of put around it of like, okay, yeah, you make this much money or you have a Lamborghini and that you've won the game, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so there's basically three foundations of game theory that you have to understand that give you like a really good understanding. So the first is zero sum and non-zero sum games. So basically what a zero sum game is like where you lose something, another person gains it, and vice versa, or you win something and the other person loses, right? So it's like, for example, two agencies fighting over the same $10,000 a month client. If you win, they lose. Okay, most of business's life is actually non-zero sum. meaning like it's a win-win, meaning it's not like, you win and your client loses sort of thing. But for example, in a competition sense where you're competing against other uh, businesses for the same, fixed amount of consumers, then, ooh, I just went out, fixed amount of consumers, then it's a completely different story. Okay. But most games in business are actually end life, just are non-zero sum, meaning like cooperation is good. You want to do win-win. You want them to win. You want to win yourself. Um, for example, it's like you partner with a software company. They handle automation. You handle traffic, and together you make more together. You increase the pie together. Okay. Scaling isn't about winning zero-sum games. It's about creating non-zero-sum ones. So it's a big thing. There's obviously like negative sum, positive sum, and zero sum. You want to obviously try, when you're obviously in business, make win-win games where you understand that both parties are winning. Okay, so that's basically the first thing you have to understand: zero sum and non-zero sum games. The second principle is Nash equilibrium. Okay, so something really interesting about Nash equilibrium. Steve, I think his name's Steve, but the scientist named Nash, he actually studied game theory really in depth, and he actually like came up with game theory and Nash equilibrium. And Nash equilibrium is basically like the best move you can possibly make based off of like every sort of other potential person making a same move as well. It's like if you're in basically a non-zero sum game, meaning you're like the other party you're trying to think of and you're trying to consider their emotions, their whatever they're going through, and you want them to win, but you also want to win. This is where Nash equilibrium comes in, because it's basically that equilibrium point between them winning, you winning, and you not having like a massive gap between like, you winning and them losing too much. And it's still that non-zero sum game. So like, for example, with Nash equilibrium, why it's so important is, for example, I can go and charge a really, really rich client, $20,000 for something that I normally charge like $2,000 for, right? That would be something that's more skewed to, what I like. That'd be something that's a little bit more skewed to something that's a little bit less fair for him, right? With that, there's a possibility now that he is getting a little bit screwed. That is not Nash equilibrium. That's more lenient towards me winning and him losing, a win-lose game, zero-sum game in a sense, right? So a Nash equilibrium would be something where buyer and seller come together and they both agree on a price that both values the buyer, values the seller, and you can come together and find that equilibrium. So Nash equilibrium is basically like if you think about all sales and negotiation is you're trying to come basically to a meeting point, like a middle ground of, yes, this is what works, this is what we're both comfortable with, let's move forward. Basically, all the sales and negotiation is reaching a Nash equilibrium. That's basically all it is. And you can, like, Nash equilibrium is, yes, like, that equilibrium point where like two parties come and reach together, but it can be even done externally as well to make decisions. So like, for example, this is just a quick kind of like a game theory graph that I just put together. Let's say firm A, and firm B, right? They both have decisions to advertise or not advertise. If they both advertise simultaneously, they both get 25 and 25 points. If one advertises, okay, so if firm B does not advertise and firm A advertises, then firm A gets 50, okay? And then vice versa. You can kind of understand this just by looking at it, right? So now you have to ask yourself, okay, if I'm firm B here, okay, what is a higher sum thing for me to do, right? Would it be for me to advertise or would it be for me to not advertise? Because I have basically two choices. And if you look at it, so A is the first number, then B is the second one. So not advertise would be 0 if they choose to advertise, and it would also be 0 if they choose to not advertise and advertise. I still get 0. Okay. If I choose to advertise, I'm basically either going to get 25 or 50, right? So this is basically Nash equilibrium, basically saying, okay, no matter what, if it's 25 or 50, my best bet is to advertise. Okay. There is zero case scenario where now not advertising is a better thing to do. Okay. And this is actually funny. I know I put this together in this like firm A, firm B kind of situation here, but that same actual thing applies when it comes to marketing and your business. Like there is literally no downside to advertising more. Even if more companies advertise, more companies spend more money than you, more companies do more outreach than you, there is no downside to you doing at least a small amount of advertising yourself. Like literally just doing getting some eyeballs, getting some outreach, and comparing the opposite of just not advertising, which is stagnation, which is no one figuring out about your offer, which is just zero, right? So like this is just like one example of how like Nash equilibrium, you can kind of understand this a little bit more. And then the third principle of game theory, just for you guys to understand, is information and awareness. So the last piece of information is what every player actually knows. So if everyone knows everything, outcomes are predictable, that's called perfect information. Okay, if everybody knows everything. But business never works that way. You don't know what your competitors' margins are, what your client's real budget is, or how your ad platform will behave the next week. That's called imperfect information. That's why signaling, showing proof, reputation becomes a real strategy. Okay. So, for example, why the information and awareness is so important when it comes to playing games is you have to know what the other player you're playing against knows and how much they know. Okay, so like for example, when you're trying to sell somebody and they have no idea that you're trying to sell that person, like let's say I'm trying to sell John and John's never been sold to before, he's never been ran through a sales script, he's never been objection handled before, he's never heard any of the tactics that I've used or am using on him. It's going to be a lot easier to close that person because he has very low awareness. Okay, it's almost like I know I'm playing the game and he doesn't know that I'm playing the game or that we're in a game at all, right? But now if you compare that to somebody who is, let's say, a top performing sales rep who knows all the sales, rigmarole, he knows all of that sort of stuff, and I'm trying to use that same sales stuff that he's heard all the time on him, he has a very high amount of awareness. Now he is going to basically have his guard up, right? He's going to have a really high guard, and that's going to be a lot harder to try to get him to, move forward in a sense, right? So you want to have an idea, obviously, when it comes to information and awareness about what competitors know, how much they know about the game. Do they even know they're playing a game, right? A lot of like people in business don't even really know that they're in the game, and those are the worst sort of people to like those are the people in business who are not going to make any money, are the people who know that or think that they're not in the game at all, and they're kind of just like chilling, they're going to kick their feet up, oh whatever, like they don't understand that this is a pure game of competition, and generating clients and winning clients over from other companies or all that sort of stuff. Okay, so these are basic things that you have to know when it comes to game theory. But I'm going to connect this back to the overall kind of online space, which you're going to find really interesting. So, so if you look at the coaching or consulting space right now, it's a zero-sum environment. Everyone's fighting for the same attention and the same clients. The market has reached a Nash equilibrium where the strategies, offers, and claims are all basically the same. Nobody can move without every other player reacting. Okay. So they're kind of in like a Nash equilibrium lock where like, shoot, okay, everybody is hitting the advertising button. Like what else is there to do? Okay. Consumers are also highly aware. They've seen every hook, every headline, every proven system, every, case study. Even testimonials aren't really doing anything anymore. And the market really isn't naive anymore. Okay. So high information and awareness, okay, from the market. And when you combine these two factors, a near zero-sum game and high awareness, you get stagnation. From a game theory perspective, the only way to win inside that environment is to change the structure of the game itself. And this is what I find really interesting about this. So Eugene Schwartz, he wrote this book called Breakthrough Advertising. And the book is absolutely phenomenal. It's like every really high level marketer has read this book. It's a very expensive book. You can go and get it. It's like $800 or $900. You can probably find the digital copy if you know somebody. But it's a very great book. And he, in this book, made a connection to something we're experiencing right now about how consumers are very highly aware and how, there's this like stagnation. And I'm going to kind of relate this back here. So pretty much, he talks about these different stages any market could basically be in. Okay. So every market, no matter what market, if it's the coaching, the cigarette industry, the automobile industry, whatever industry or market you want to think of, okay, markets move in these, they're basically in one of these 5 or so phases. Okay. So stage 1 is the market's new. Nobody's seen the product before. So basic messaging works. Okay. Awareness is low because it's a new product, right? So like take this pill and lose weight, run Facebook ads and get clients. Okay. In stage 2, competition starts to appear. Your message now has to shift from we exist to we're better because there's other people you're competing against. Okay. So you have to start comparing, emphasizing features and benefits, etc. Stage 3, okay, now the audience has heard it all. They've heard all the claims, all the we're better than this. They're skeptical. So to keep their attention, you now need to explain how your product works more in depth. This is what Schwartz called introducing a mechanism. Okay. So this pill blocks fat absorption. This ad system uses data-driven targeting, like having a mechanism that's more labeled around you. Okay. And then stage 4 is when things get really crowded. Every brand uses similar mechanisms. So you have to reframe the problem entirely. That's where new models like the deposit-backed challenges or hybrid offers come in. This is where you aren't just differentiating yourself, but changing how the game is actually played. Okay. And stage 5 is saturation, which means the audience is completely jaded and no longer buy features or even outcomes. They only buy for identity and belonging. Think of how Apple stopped talking about the processors and started talking about creativity, or Red Bull with flavoring, and they made energy the brand itself. Okay. So basically, as you can see, stage 1, you're brand new. No one knows about you. You go and you just talk about your product. Stage 2, you got to emphasize a little bit. Stage 3, emphasizing doesn't work. You got to make a new mechanism. Then you got to emphasize the mechanism. And then you reach the point where now you've emboldened, you've created this new mechanism. You've, made the grandest of slam offers. Okay. And now you have to basically, stage 5, remake the game. Okay. Stop where people aren't buying the outcomes. They're buying the identity and belonging. So you're basically remaking the game. Okay. And all markets move through these stages. Okay. In the early stages, the game is a non-zero sum game. The pie is expanding and there's room for everyone. As awareness grows, the market becomes zero sum. Each player divides the same amount of attention and trust across more competitors. Okay. So that's the reality for most coaching agency info businesses right now. Everyone is playing inside an equilibrium. Everyone's saying the same thing, using the same scripts, making the same guarantees, which ultimately make it so nobody can win by simply working harder or spending more money on ads. Okay. So as you can see here, I don't know if I made this in a good way, this connection, but when it comes to this level of saturation that the market is seeing, especially in coaching right now, everyone's emboldening, making their offers even more. But now we've reached this Nash equilibrium where now doing more of that is not going to work. And in order to get ahead, you have to reinvent the game in a sense. You have to reinvent the wheel, okay? And do something completely different, okay? Identity and belonging, doing something completely different because everybody is so sick of everything, okay? Cool. And the other factor here is the cost of knowledge. So information that once gave you an edge means nothing. You can learn like an entire business model from YouTube. Every competitor has access to the same frameworks and tools, and every prospect has seen the same offers before. Awareness is extremely high. Okay, so when you combine high awareness, cheap information, and saturated messaging, you get a market that's perfectly efficient, but nearly impossible to stand out in. It becomes a game of volume and not innovation. Unless you have the scale to make that physics work in your favor, you'll end up fighting for scraps inside of a game that's already solved. Okay? You'll just keep on doing and more volume, and you'll basically just be screaming louder in a room that's soundproof. Okay? So let's go over like what these different markets and combination of game theory metrics kind of look like. Okay? So number one is zero sum, okay, low awareness, and no Nash equilibrium. So when it's a zero sum game, everyone fights for the same small pool of customers because the market isn't developed yet. If you win, someone else loses them. Low awareness within this market means that buyers don't really understand the offer, category value, or differences. Okay, the outcome is that the first movers win by default because no one else knows what they're doing yet. Okay. Number two is zero sum plus low awareness. Okay, everyone's still fighting for the same customers who don't know much, but they do know that all offers look identical. Competitors end up blindly copying each other until everything becomes the same. The price, the structure, the delivery, etc. The outcome in this scenario is that nobody innovates not because prospects are smart, because competitors have locked themselves into identical offers by habit. And even just looking at this from a game theory perspective, if everybody in the market is copying each other's offers, like for example, if I'm a gym owner and I am based in like Miami, for example, and I do a totally free training at my gym for like 6 months, then everybody is going to come to my gym. And now the only way to compete with me, if you're another gym in Miami, is now to basically have an offer that's that good, if you think about it. Okay. So now that's like totally took a poo on all of my other competitors, and I've now made it into like a zero sum game in a sense. So yeah, okay. And then number three is zero sum plus high awareness, no Nash equilibrium. Competitors are still fighting for the market share. If there's no equilibrium, that means competitors haven't yet synchronized their strategies. There's still room for novel moves. Okay. Zero sum, high awareness, and Nash equilibrium. So this is the coaching market today. Zero sum means you're not creating new demand. You're fighting for the same people every other coach is targeting. Prospects know all the funnels, all the promises, all the frameworks, and they're not impressed by anything. At the same time, everyone has converged into the same offer, same hybrid model, same guarantee, same VSL, same book a call with me on Calendly. And this results in a completely frozen market where you can't win by working harder or being louder. The only massive accounts with millions of impressions can brute force results that way. Okay? That's where we're at today. And where we can go is even further, right? So it's like non-zero sum plus low awareness, right? Where you can expand the market. If you win, others don't lose. Non-zero sum, low awareness, non-zero sum, high awareness. Okay, I kind of wrote some of these out so you can kind of see how this works. But basically, all in all, what you have to know is we're in a zero sum and high awareness with kind of this like Nash equilibrium in today's coaching market. And the problem is everyone's doing the same thing. And the solution to that problem is to do something so radically different and basically create a new game, not a new mechanism, not a new like cool little pipeline, but to create a totally new thing that you're selling. And this is the thing, a totally like new transformation. And what I would recommend you to do if you're a coach, let's say you're a fitness coach, for example, and you're watching this, what I'm doing with my clients is instead of just going and selling like, oh, do you want to lose weight, right? One of my coaches right now, we're doing a peptide. He's basically a peptide coach, where instead of selling, hey, do you want to lose weight? Yes, that's part of the mechanism still. But what we're doing is we're selling peptides, and we're basically selling access to him through the coaching, and peptides are an offshoot from that. Excuse me. Right? So now we position him not as a weight loss coach or whatever, but now a peptide specialist and a peptide kind of consultant, right? Who, yes, you're still getting nutrition, still everything fitness coaching, but now he's just totally positioned completely differently. Okay. Another one of my clients, instead of being like a normal weight loss coach or whatever, he's helping postpartum mothers reset their hormones, right? So you see how we just basically, like we're kind of reinventing the games that we're playing within these like hyper niches in a sense. And when we get in there, now we're in a game that is low awareness, right? Meaning there's not a lot of other people in there. It is non-zero sum, meaning we're not even like, we don't have to have this massive amount of like we're taking from other competitors. Okay. And there's not this like mass Nash equilibrium where there's like other companies and now we're like kind of stuck at a standstill, like the example I gave you about the gyms with the free trials and everyone's doing this and you don't want to step outside of what everyone else is doing because you don't want to be whatever or all this sort of stuff. Okay. So that's kind of the basic solution for what you have to know. I have a ton of videos where I talk about how you can position yourself correctly, especially in today's market. But you have to understand that right now we are in a highly, highly saturated market, and doing the same things that everyone else is doing is just mathematically incorrect. And I hope I've proven that to you today and given you a strong reason as to why it is and why we're in a game right now. If you're in the coaching or if you're in the online space, right, that is a zero sum game, okay, where we are at a Nash equilibrium standstill. Everyone's doing the exact same thing. Everyone's trying to scale, they're posting, everyone's trying to do the same content style or whatever. And we have a very high amount of knowledge being spread to all consumers. And they have a lot of awareness about what even other people have sold to them. Like people are even scared right now to jump on like a Calendly call, right? They're like nervous about that because they've been on Calendly calls in the past and have gotten hard closed, forced to make a decision when they didn't even want to make a decision. And now they're like shameful about that and scared to even do that in the future. Like these are things you have to understand about the game you're playing so that you can adjust your strategy to get ahead. So I hope you found some value from this video. I hope you found this to be somewhat interesting, but just a quick video that I wanted to make about game theory and how kind of you can scale your business in a game theory optimal way by understanding math, by understanding a little bit about Eugene Schwartz and advertising. And a key thing that I'll leave you with is whenever you're thinking of making a decision, write out who you're competing against within that decision. So like, let's say if it is like, let's say for one of your clients, oh, should I try to pitch my client this, or should I, pitch my client rev share, or should I pitch them $2,000 a month or whatever? Write out your options on a table like this, and then write out how that other person would respond or other, party would respond, and write out their options and like weigh out the options of how they would collude together, right? And you will find an equilibrium in a sense that you can use to make decisions. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've done that has allowed me to make really good decisions for this, because you can assign a mathematical weight to certain scenarios or whatever and do it that way. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you got some value, and shoot me a subscribe and follow kind of what I'm doing here on my YouTube.